my name is Angela. I graduated from Georgetown College in 2019 with a degree in biology of global health. And since then, I've been working as a clinical research coordinator at Weill Cornell Medicine, Division of Gastroenterology and Hepatology. So happy to go further into depth with what I do on a daily basis. But essentially, I work as a coordinator for research trials, phase 1 through 3, as well as investigator-initiated trials. So this involves a combination of observational trials as well as different therapies for disease states, including diabetes, obesity, C. difficile, among others, fatty liver. And kind of how I got into this position is that at Georgetown, I was very involved in programs such as foci. I was a foci participant, foci leader, as well as some ABP trips I participated and led as well. So I was very passionate about social justice, health equity, but I wasn't exactly sure whether or not I wanted to pursue medicine as a career. So that's why I came home to New York City, of which I'm a native, and decided to take this position because it's been really great for me to get access to the field, learn from physicians, as well as to really see if this is something I could see myself doing long term. So I've been here since September 2019 and currently applying to medical school because as a result of my position here, I've really been able to learn more about the field and decided that I actually do want to be a physician. So happy to answer any questions you have about position or kind of what led me to this.
Awesome. Hi, my name is Shanta. Can you hear me okay too? Just checking. Okay. So I also actually graduated Georgetown College in the class of 2019, but I was a math major, so a little bit different. During undergrad, I think I wasn't like I did enjoy like my pre-medical classes, and I did enjoy my math courses, but I wanted to kind of combine the two, and so that kind of inspired my interest in like bioinformatics research, which is what I was doing primarily at NIH since like September 2019. And so I worked there for about 2 years. I was working in a basic science immunology lab where we were looking at the target genes that are important for notch signaling, which is very crucial for a lot of systems, but especially like in T cell development. And so it was very cool to incorporate those two different interests. And I'm happy to talk more about that. And actually, I started a master's program back at Georgetown called Systems Medicine, which kind of combines my bioinformatics interests with more of a clinical perspective. And so if you also have questions about masters as well, I'd be happy to answer any questions. So yeah, that's all I have to say.
Hi, everyone. My name is Armelle. So I graduated Georgetown last year during the pandemic. And I was also a biology of global health major in the college. And for my first gap year, I went back to New Jersey where I have some family, and I worked as a pediatric medical assistant for a year. And that was really nice to kind of get a more hands-on perspective on the medical field and really interact one-on-one with the doctor for a longer time period than the short shadowing I had done while in undergrad. And then after that, this year in August, I decided to, or before August I decided, but in August I matriculated into a grad program at Georgetown as well. And I am studying biology, or not biology, just global health. And I really wanted to have a strong background in that. It was either that or an MPH, which I would have done as a dual program with medical school. But since I was taking the second gap year, I decided to do the program beforehand. That way I didn't have to do 5 years afterwards. So it's just kind of my way of trying to incorporate medicine, but also making sure that I'm looking more of a population point of view to impact the most people possible. So if you guys have any questions on that, I can answer them.
Perfect. Thank you, everybody. So Angela, if you could get us started on just sharing the day-to-day responsibilities of your gap year experience, that would be great.
Sure. So as a clinical research coordinator, I kind of define my general roles into two categories, one which is recruiting patients and the second which is maintaining the clinical trials. So for recruitment, I essentially screen all the physicians here at the institution in my department, looking at their daily schedules, seeing if any of the patients fit into the inclusion criteria for the trials. And then approach patients to see if they're interested, whether it be in person or by phone. And we bring them in for screening visits, which are essentially patient visits where we go over their medical history before they actually decide to provide their informed consent and participate. So I think that's a huge bulk of what I do. And the second is maintaining the research trials. So basically handling the logistics of everything involved. So whether it be scheduling those screening visits, whether it be doing data entry, we have a lot of different regulatory documents and we have regulatory specialists here. So it's basically just ensuring that there's an open line of communication between the study sponsors, so like the pharmaceutical companies, ensuring that we have all the signed paperwork, everything in place in our like regulatory binder. So it's a combination of like direct patient interaction, seeing them during their patient visits, sometimes getting surveys, speaking with them about different trials that they may be candidates for, and also like on the back end, ensuring that everything is in place. So in case we have any sorts of regulatory visits, like from FDA or other oversight boards, we will be in compliance.
And for me, at least at working at NIH, I would say it was somewhat unstructured. Like in terms of the day-to-day responsibilities, it varied. There were like, I would have like regular meetings with my PI and then like with certain coworkers whom I was working directly with on the project. And then we would have like journal clubs as well and certain seminars that I would attend as well. Other than that, like I would basically spend the rest of the day like planning out my schedule in terms of like what tasks I needed to finish and be able to present to my group as well as to my PI. And I would also, with things being online, there was like that I have to work online for remotely, for most of my time. But since I was doing computational research, that transition wasn't too bad at all. But it was a lot of just reaching out and talking through like Microsoft Teams with the rest of my group and trying to basically do data analysis on a lot of the biological data sets that one of my coworkers was working with and trying to see if we could kind of validate the information that we were getting with comparing across different data sets. But yeah, a lot of computer work. So yeah.
So for me as a medical assistant, a lot of the things I did were actually administrative, kind of like front office work. So the billing, checking patients in, and then I would also do some of the back office work. Whenever a patient would come in, I would kind of do the initial biometric stuff, like the height, weight, the blood pressure, things like that, to get them prepped for the doctor. And I also would like do intake or interview the patients to figure out what was going on. And I would write that down for the physician. That way he would have that done. And the occasional time would have like a more complex case where we needed to do like a urinalysis or something like that. So that I would work on that for the physician. That way it would be ready for him. And then I actually worked in a single office, a single physician office. So a lot of the things a lot of the descriptions you see for medical assistant, I didn't have to do because it was such a small office. So I didn't do any venom pressure or anything like that. I know some medical assistants will also have to do some like more intense lab work, but I didn't have to do that because we were so small.
All right, great. And how did you all secure your gap year experiences?
I can start. So I actually applied to another position at Weill Cornell Medicine. I want to say in September or October of my senior year. But by the time I applied, that position was already filled. But I guess Cornell kind of had my resume on file because I remember actually I was with Shanta. It was, I want to say Georgetown Day it was. We both got an email from a person at Cornell, like saying that we have a position, clinical research coordinator here in New York. And we were just both confused as to, how they got our resume email. But yeah, I followed up with the individual and ended up interviewing. And I guess I was just very lucky because I got the position without actually, submitting a formal application. But I think that goes to show that the Georgetown degree, as well as the connections you can make at the career center and going to these kinds of events, can really help you get jobs in ways that you never really expect. So it's good to network early and often.
I would like to second what Angela said about like the importance of networking, as well as the weight that the Georgetown degree really has. Like for this position that I had with NIH, I did apply like through their general application. And sometimes you get like, there's a lot of people who apply. So it is sometimes helpful to like email directly certain PIs and like say, hey, I'm interested in your research, like, take that step further. Especially like, like if you're, like, I think for me, I had some coding experience. So like some PIs happen to be looking for someone who has that. And so my PI was, and so she was like, oh, you seem like a good match. But I think it is super helpful to reach out and like not be afraid to to just like be consistent about it.
Yeah, so actually it took me quite a while to get my position. I applied to maybe like 50 to 60 jobs. I was also in New Jersey, and I think New Jersey is one of those states where you need to be certified to have to work as a medical assistant. I know DC is a bit more flexible with that, but certain states, like they're really, really strong about the certification. So it took me a while to really find somewhere that would take me. And the physician that I worked with actually, so I think one of the things when you're applying for jobs is to always follow up. Like if you don't hear back, always take that extra step to reach out, because that will distinguish you from the other applicants who are just kind of like looking for a quick job and applying everywhere all at once. So that's what happened with me. I applied to a couple jobs, and I always made sure I had a Excel sheet actually where I listed the date that I submitted my resume, and I knew that a week from there I need to reach back out to make sure that they like got my resume, or at least kind of ping them that way they know to take a look at it. So that's what I did. I called the office directly and said, hey, I applied. Did you guys get to take a look? And that prompted the office manager to actually like print it out and give it to the doctor directly. And then when I got in, even though I wasn't certified, again, kind of like with the Georgetown name, I think that gave me some sort of credibility as someone who would take the job seriously, even though I wasn't certified. And I had actually taken the germs class as well. So I was NREMT certified as an EMT. So some of the basic kind of like CPR skills that they might've been looking for were there, even though I wasn't certified as a medical assistant.
Gosh, thank you all for sharing. Definitely different journeys. Armelle, sorry that it took you a while, but your perseverance paid off. So good job. And I want everybody to note too that what I was hearing, I don't remember the exact day that Georgetown Day is, but that's later in the spring, right? And so I get a lot of students sometimes panicking in the fall that they should start looking. And really what I hear from all three of you is the spring is generally when recruitment time starts. Your path is different than many of the students at Georgetown, so be patient with that. My last question, and then you all are welcome, all the students, to put in your questions in the chat, is how do you think these experiences will set you up for your application and for medical school? If you've already applied, how have they? Tell us about your application process and where you're at with that, and how these experiences will amplify your resume.
Absolutely. So just speaking from my own experience, I think my current position has helped me in multiple ways for the medical school application process. I think first and foremost, giving me the experience that going straight from undergrad to medical school that I would not have had. So just like basic things such as, presentation skills, emailing skills, cold calling skills, those kinds of things that I honestly at age 21 or 22 wasn't very well versed in. So I think that these skills will definitely help me, whether it be, on the interviewing trail, but also as a student and a future physician. I think these are things that one develops in any kind of professional setting at be, whether it be, in my current position or anyone else. Additionally, I've had the opportunity to work with various physicians, all with different research backgrounds, and also some of them have served as mentors for me. So whether it be formally, completing research projects with them, but also just getting their advice about how to proceed with the medical school application process. Some gave me advice on like interviewing, some gave me advice on even like further down the line, what to look for in residencies, for example. So just like a perspective that I don't think I would have had I not gone to this position and just gone through. And I think also what I mentioned before, having clinical experience really does help, both in terms of the actual logistics of getting into medical school, but also for just, having the confidence within you that this is something that you want to pursue. As I mentioned before, I've always been interested in health equity and, improving health from a population standpoint, but I wasn't always sure that I actually wanted to be a clinician and, do these patient interactions. But, through my position, it's clinical research, so it's not like a basic science kind of lab. I'm able to speak with patients and get to know them, and I've really found that I really do love that interaction. So I think just, because of the medical school application process, the whole training process is difficult, having this sense of confidence is something that I really value. And I believe that if you all were to take a position like clinical research coordinator or any of the other ones of other panelists, you'll be able to find that confidence within you, and it'll really help in the long run.
Yeah, I definitely think that it's definitely supported my confidence, especially in terms of like you're basically contributing to the healthcare field, like whichever position that you're in, you're seeing it in action, right? Like you're outside of like the bubble that is school, and then you're basically seeing, okay, like what is the healthcare field like? Where are the limitations? Where can I improve it? And those are really essential aspects that you can add to your application or in your interview. And so it gives you that like real world experience. And I think for me, specifically working at NIH, it gave me a more, it definitely broadened my perspective on other paths I can pursue, and how even if I don't have a linear path, it's still like I am finding new ways which I can contribute to the field, new ways that I can, if I choose to pursue medicine still, new ways that I can implement it in my practice later on, like bioinformatics skills and like possibly going into a more personalized medicine route and data analysis. Like those are, or whatever it is, like if it's like health, relating to health equity and like advocating for those issues, those are all important aspects that are both important for the application, but also in what kind of doctor you're going to be. So it was it's definitely a great experience, I think. And I think also, especially at NIH, they do have a lot of resources for applying for medical school, applying for PhD programs, applying for jobs. And you can also develop a lot of like relationships with other mentors. And so there's like a wide range of opportunities for sure.
Yeah, I definitely second everything that they both have said. I think for me, one of the big things that I've gained while working as a medical assistant has been the interactions that I've had with patients. And I think doing 4 years of undergrad where I'm kind of only with the people who are similar like me, similar age groups, we're all kind of like always talking about school to each other. I honestly kind of forgot how to talk to other people about different things, especially when you're kind of working with pediatric patients too. It really forced me to kind of like stop in my tracks and really like go back to I guess the roots of what medicine is, which is like how to show compassion, how to connect one-on-one with people. That's something that has been really huge for me. And also I would say that working as a medical assistant, you also gain a lot of the clinical aspects that you need in order to just physically or just logistically apply to medical school. But also I've found myself reusing and going back to a lot of the things that I learned in undergrad, kind of reinforcing all those material that I was learning, learning about different diseases, and also a lot of the back office work that goes into medicine, which I don't think we see as pre-meds too much. So what is the insurance things looking like, the billing aspect? And I think that also opened my eyes to like the different ways, again, that inequities manifest themselves in medicine. So even just looking at what patients we were seeing on a day-to-day and how maybe insurance differences kind of bar different patients and contribute to inequalities in healthcare. So I think all those perspectives were really helpful, and I really see myself using those in medical school. So.
Great. It seems like all of you had a really strong support network as well during this time, which is great. All right, so we have one question to start. How did you get over the fear of becoming too comfortable during a gap year and fearing that you will not make it to graduate school?
So I guess I can start. So this is actually a question I received quite a bit when I was in the transition between college and working. And to be honest with you, it's actually not something that I ever really was worried about, because in my heart, I knew that if I worked for 1, 2, or 3 years and I decided that this is not something I wanted to do, I think I was okay with having that flexibility and knowing that maybe this is something I wanted to do in the past, but things have changed, and I was personally okay with that. And I also thought that, if things come up, it may be a sign that maybe this is not really the thing that drives me. This is not really, medicine is not something that I really, I guess, wanted that much to begin with. That's kind of the thought I had in my head. But I understand that this is a concern that many students have, and a very understandable one, because, working is very different than going to school. School is stressful in that you're always kind of on top of it, working assignments, papers, exams, whereas work is a little bit better, depending obviously on what work you do. But touching on the second question a little bit, my work hours are a standard 9 to 5. So there could be fear that after working this kind of more well-balanced life, you don't want to go back into the stresses of medical school. But I think I would go back to what Jodi was mentioning, having a good support network and making sure that you, even though you have all these uncertainties about the future, lean on them and kind of follow your heart, and know that if this is something you want to do, you'll be able to pick it back up.
Yeah, 100%. I totally agree with what Angela said. I think, I definitely feel like whatever experience you choose, like it's still going to be enriching. Like, like you're learning more about the field, and it's not like I'm going to be a doctor or I'm not. Like, you're going to be a certain type of physician. You're going to, like, you're going to have a different perspective on it, even if you're just sure that you're going to go into the medical field. So it gives you that nuance in your application that you're going to need anyways. And I think, like for me, I did spend 2 years at NIH, and now I'm working, I'm not working, I'm doing a master's in systems medicine. And so I am back in school, and I do see like kind of a transition in terms of like my work schedule was a lot more like the hours were very different, especially because a lot of it was online. And so like I would always be on the computer all day. And Whereas in school, like you have certain times for classes, you kind of have a very different schedule, I think. But I think as long as you are around people who are like supporting you and like will help you like navigate areas of uncertainty, I think if that's the direction you want to go in, like if you still want to go into medicine, then you're gonna make it happen for sure.
For me, when I first started on my pre-med journey, I hadn't thought about taking a gap year or anything. So when it came around, I guess like my senior fall, when I was really starting to consider it, I was definitely really scared because I thought that taking a gap year meant that I will never end up in medical school, but that's not the case at all. Especially when you're doing, when you're in a position where you're still kind of involved in like different aspects of the medical field, you're still very connected. And I was surprised to find out like I didn't really lose that motivation at all, like I had thought. So I think, especially if you're gonna take a gap year in like a medical area, I think you'll be surprised that you won't lose that motivation and that you'll actually be more empowered to apply. Like you'll feel more assertive and more confident in your application.
I think that makes a lot of sense, Armelle. You know, the fact that you are all connected and you're with people who are either in that career or aspiring to be in that career makes a lot of sense that it keeps you on the track for your goal. When did you and when will you take the MCAT? And you all don't have to go in order at this point, so whatever works for you.
I can go. So I'm actually applying this cycle and I took the MCAT very, very late. And I don't recommend doing this because there's a lot of anxiety and fear there. But I took it beginning of July this year, which is much, much later in the cycle. Actually, I submitted my primaries before I took the MCAT. So there are options, like if you feel like you're kind of behind, that you can still kind of do it. Especially when you first submit your primaries, like you don't get viewed later until about 3 weeks later anyway. So even if you take the MCAT a little bit later, like in July, it's the timing can work out for you as long as you're kind of like aware of that.
So
yeah, definitely. Oh, go ahead, Shanta.
Sorry, I was gonna say I did take the MCAT actually. So I did actually apply previously and like to a few schools, and I didn't get in the past cycle. But I took the MCAT in August of I think 2020, and I'm planning on retaking the MCAT. Yeah, so I'm in the process of studying for that. Yeah, that's all I'll say. Yeah.
Yeah, I just wanted to go back to what Armelle was saying, and how she took the MCAT a little bit later. I know like various people who've also taken the MCAT later, and it worked out fine for them. So I know that there's a lot of anxiety about the medical school timeline, and I think it is typically a little bit more advantageous, a little bit less stressful to take it early. But don't feel like you have to adhere by one timeline, and otherwise you have no chances of qualifying or getting in. Definitely do what's best for you. As for myself, I also had a lot of anxiety about the MCAT because I was working full time, but I had a little bit more time to study because of the COVID-19 pandemic, working from home. So that saved me time from commuting. So I took the MCAT this year in January. I had studied for about 4 months prior. So it is manageable working full time. It does require a little bit of dedication, and it's definitely not, it wasn't fun, I'm not gonna lie. But after it's done, I was able to submit my applications like in June. So I think that for someone like me who was kind of anxious about doing everything while working full time, it was better for me to take it a little bit earlier.
That makes sense. And you're answering, thank you, Maeve's question here. Shanta or Armelle, do you have anything to add on how you're managing work responsibilities and application stuff at this point?
I can so I think so I did say I did apply, but so like I think it was definitely difficult, especially like as your like the applications continue, like and you have to send in more and more essays. It's difficult to manage, but I think an important aspect is like communicating with your PI or whoever is your supervisor, because they want you to succeed, they want you to do well, and your work is important, but your future is also important, and they know that. So I definitely felt like having an honest communication with your higher ups is super important.
Yeah, for me, a lot of it was actually pre-writing some of the essays. So even before, so I had finished my primaries pretty early, maybe like February or March, even before I submitted it to the committee. And then I kind of just went online and looked up at the schools. I had a school list, and I knew kind of like what their past secondary questions were. And I think there are websites where they give you like the 5 big ones that you need to write beforehand, and then from those you can like pull and like adjust for individual schools. So I think at least having an outline for at least those 5 essay questions will help you a lot in the long run, to kind of like minimize the time that you're taking to write individual essays. So a lot of it is preparing ahead of time.
Great tips. So another question about tips. What are some resources you use to help with applying to graduate or med school?
Sure. I just want to piggyback off what Shanta and Armelle said. So I definitely agree with both of them. You know, having good communication with your higher ups, you know, being transparent about your medical school admissions process, and you know, letting them know you may need some additional time off. Like for example, I was not as good as Armelle. I was kind of writing things at the last moment. So I was able to take a vacation in July to work on my applications, but also, you know, just I went to Hawaii. So I was just trying to take a break from work as well as work on school things. So I think definitely if I could go back in time, I would be more like Armelle and pre-write things more. But I think that because I had support from my work, they were understanding. And as for resources I used, I very heavily relied on the resources provided by Lucy Cherner and Dr. Connell at the pre-med office. They're really good about having all these webinars about aspects of the medical school admissions process, whether it be interviewing, writing the primaries, secondaries, everything. Pretty much they are super helpful. And I think that was my first resource when it came to everything related to the process. And secondarily, I would use YouTube videos such as, I'm not sure if you guys have heard of him, Dr. Gray, I think he is, that's the name. He's very good when it comes to writing narratives. So when I was figuring out how to write my working experiences, I would look to his videos just to see what others had done and kind of make sure that my application was a little bit more engaging. And I think third, you know, take this with a grain of salt because it's an open forum, so you can't exactly rely on every information you receive. But I do think that like forums like Reddit or SDN are useful because you get to see in past years how the process has gone for some. So you can see, for example, whether or not the application interviews are the formats of the interviews. You can see kind of the timelines. So it gives you like a better sense of what's going on and relieves some anxiety. But I wouldn't rely on those sources as your primary. I would definitely like reach out to the pre-med office first.
Yeah, I definitely felt like the pre-health advising was super helpful for resources. Their workshops were extremely helpful. And yeah, they definitely gave really great advice. I also used NIH has their own advising as well. And so they gave information about applying. They had mock interviews. And I think they actually have like, so like there's an within NIH, there's a Office of Intramural Training and Education, or OITE, and they do have a YouTube channel. So they post like videos about like practice for interviews, or like, well, a lot of different things. They have so many different videos. Their career fairs, they have a ton of people talking there. So like I would just check it out anyways. But yeah, I would recommend that. And I also want to echo what Angela said about like, sometimes you can, like with so many different resources, it can be a bit confusing to like navigate kind of what to use, especially like also with Reddit and SDN, although they are super helpful. But I think if you, like for me, I felt like the pre-health advising advice, like Dr. Connell and Lucy Cherner's advice were super helpful. And so I would primarily go with them. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I also use Dr. Gray, Reddit, and some of the pre-health advising things that they have on the Canvas. I think that Canvas site was honestly so great. Everything's so organized, and it was very easy to find things on there. And in addition, I also used, what was I gonna say? Oh goodness, it escaped me there. I completely forget. Oh, I was gonna say for DO, I'm also applying MD and DO. And I will say that I felt like there were less resources for DO applications than MD applications. So for that, I kind of had to scramble a little bit and kind of piece things together, primarily from Reddit, but also some other forums that I found online. Even the school's websites sometimes aren't super organized, so that was a little bit hard to navigate, I will say. For DO, I would say try to start early with trying to organize like what the application process is like and what each step is, because there are some differences with the MD cycle. But that's the only area I felt like where I didn't have as much support.
Perfect. I just want to also give a shout out. Lucy Turner worked really hard on that Canvas page, and it's so great to hear that you're using it and loving it. So I will definitely pass this along to her. Shanta, thank you for I was going to ask you to put in the NIH videos, and then Angela also put in hers. I'm also a big fan of the Savvy Pre-Med. He has a blog, and you could sign up for his blog post and just get regular blogs and kind of keep your mind on different application aspects. But he's really great and has really good information. So I recommend signing up for his blog.
I'm sorry, I just wanted to add one more thing. What I was struggling to remember was that the SHAPE program, I actually got mentors from the SHAPE program, the regular SHAPE program, where I had a mentor who helped me like throughout the 2020 like fall and spring. But then this summer as well, they did launch the another SHAPE mentoring that ran through the summer for the application cycle itself, and that was invaluable to me. I had a tutor that a mentor that I worked with, and each week we kind of focused on one of those essay topics that I talked about. So 5 weeks, each week is an essay topic, and that really helped me kind of like refine all of my essays, and that was really great.
Perfect. If you could put the link to that program in the chat, that'd be great too, Armelle. So my last question, oh, there is a question though. So let me make sure I get a student's question. Would you say it's better to take the MCAT right after finishing your related coursework, or to wait another year to study on your own, but risk forgetting the material from those courses? I'm not sure whether it's better to extend the process or get it over with. Thank you. Good question.
That's an excellent question. And I think that it really depends on yourself. So I think it's a little bit different for everyone. But for my experience, I thought that even though I took the MCAT almost, I want to say, so 2021, 2019, so yeah, almost two years after I finished my undergraduate work, I still think that I was okay, taking the MCAT, because in my opinion, the MCAT is all about not just the knowledge, but application of knowledge. So through reviewing the material, honestly, I probably didn't know that much material taking the MCAT either, because I, practiced through UWorld practice questions, the questions provided by the AAMC. So I do think that like the amount of knowledge that you have to study is quite a lot, but when you actually take the test, it's not like you're just going to solely rely on that knowledge and information. You have to learn how to critically think. So I think that you will be okay if you take it after your coursework. I think that maybe you may benefit from having that background knowledge, and you might have to study a little bit less. But it really just depends on your own timeline, how you feel.
Yeah, I think, yeah, I agree. Like, I think it depends on, like, for you personally, what is the best. For me, I didn't feel like right after school, like I was prepared to take the MCAT, and I think it was better for me to wait. And I think right now, like I'm taking more like biology courses, given that I was a math major. I didn't take so many, so I think it's also super helpful for me right now. As I'm studying, I'm learning more, but I really think it's up to you, and you'll see your progress as you take practice tests and see like if you're ready or not.
Yeah, I would say that the biggest or the best studying you can do for the MCAT is doing well in your pre-med courses like right now. So definitely prioritize those as much as you can while you're in school, because that will help you the most in the long run. I was fortunate because a lot of the things that I did in undergrad really reinforced some of the materials that were in my class, my pre-med classes, and on the MCAT. So I was a little bit less anxious studying for it after I had graduated, because I already had a good handle on some of the material. So I would say the best resource for me was my undergrad classes, prioritizing them and doing well in them. And that will really help you shape your studying afterwards.
Perfect. Great advice. My last question is, knowing what you know now, what would you have done differently while you were at Georgetown? Whoever wants to take it first.
I'll go. So I do not have a pretty great research portfolio for medical school. So I think something I would have done differently, I would have been more proactive with the research searching, reaching out to professors and doctors in the medical school for research. And I think that's something that you don't have to do early, like as a freshman, but it is something I wish I had given more time to.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think, yeah, I definitely think like being proactive early on in terms of like figuring out how to use your time effectively at Georgetown, because Georgetown has a lot of resources. Like, if you want to volunteer, if you want to get clinical experience or research experience, there's so much here, especially since we're also in DC. So I definitely felt like if maybe getting more advising earlier on or seeking advising earlier on would have been helpful for like kind of tailoring my experience more. But the gap years have helped too, like, getting the areas where I wasn't as strong with, like having time for that. But yeah, I don't really, I think that's it for me.
I feel like this is a loaded question, because I feel like even if you go back 2 years to when I graduated, I feel like I had so much anxiety about this process. Always kind of comparing myself to the next person, worried that I wasn't doing the right things. I didn't have enough research, volunteering, the grades, everything like was very much weighing down on me, and it made me very tired. And I was at the point of burnout. So if I could go back in time, I would tell myself a number of things. I think the first thing is definitely just to focus on yourself and know that if it's meant to be, you will get there. Everyone's journey is a little bit different. You may go straight out of undergrad. You may need to take, a number of years before, but that's all okay. And as the other panelists have mentioned, all their gap year experiences enrich their life, whether or not they end up going to medical school. And if they do, it'll make them better physicians. So I think, in my opinion, there is not really much to lose from you just, doing your daily life, trying your best, and not having too much anxiety about what comes next. For even like how we study for the MCAT, all of us had different timelines. All of us did studying a little bit differently, but we're all kind of reaching the same destination. And another thing, I would also go back to what Shanta said, because I feel that I didn't reach out early enough for pre-med advising. So my timeline was a little bit not as clear in my head. So I think that caused me to have to take some more time after undergrad, doing some things that I may have been able to build into my undergraduate experience had I sat down with an advisor earlier on and planned it out a little bit better. But just harkening back to what I just said, you know, do I feel that my pre-med experience was worse because I hadn't? No, you know, I'm really happy with the experiences I've had after undergrad. So I think that hindsight is always 20/20, and you'll learn from whatever experiences you go through. And I think working really does create a different vibe within you. Like, you gain more confidence, and I do support taking time off, even a year or more, just to do things outside of school, whether it be working or just exploring some of your hobbies, because I think that it'll make you more well-rounded and a happier person, but it'll also enhance your medical school application.
Sorry,
Yeah. Go ahead.
I just wanted to like reiterate what Angela said, because like also when she mentioned like taking care of yourself, that is super important. I feel like, especially like we're all pre-meds, we like are like, we want to get the best and everything, which is so important. But I think like it's a marathon, and you know, we have to be in a healthy state to actually do well and be happy and be good physicians for our patients. So that's a really important thing. And yeah, everyone's timeline is going to be different. And I think that's also an aspect of applications that like a lot of admissions committees want. Like, they want people with different experiences, different views. So it's not a bad thing at all. So yeah, I totally agree with that.